everyone, welcome back to the channel. Awesome to have you here again for another RC adventure. In today's video, I'm taking my RocHobby Mashigan back out on the trails for some proper crawling action. And yes, it finally has a brand new Hobbywing Fusion installed after the previous one decided to turn itself into a portable campfire. If you missed that disaster, you can still spot the Barbecue Edition Fusion in one of my earlier videos. But before the crawling could begin, it was time for the monthly maintenance day at the RC terrain. The grass and weeds had grown so tall that at some points it looked less like an RC course and more like a jungle survival challenge than an RC course. You could barely see where you were driving anymore. So out came the tools, trimmers, and plenty of motivation to make the terrain look awesome and drivable again. After a lot of hard work, the course was finally visible once more and ready for the Mashigan to hit the obstacles properly. And of course, a huge and massive thank you to all the volunteers who helped out today. Without you guys, this terrain would probably disappear completely into the wilderness by next month. Your hard work and dedication are massively appreciated. Once the maintenance was done, it was finally time for what we all came for. Slow crawling, tricky lines, muddy sections, and seeing if the new Fusion survives longer than the previous one. Will the Mashigan conquer the terrain? Or will something else randomly explode again? Grab a drink, sit back, and enjoy the adventure. So this is the RocHobby Mashigan, and of course RocHobby is part of FMS, a brand many of us already know from making solid and affordable scale crawlers. And honestly, the Mashigan is another perfect example of that philosophy. You're not buying this crawler expecting full competition level performance straight out of the box, but just look at it for a second. What an absolute beauty this thing is. Now of course, I couldn't leave it completely stock. I made a couple of upgrades to improve the crawling performance a bit, because from the factory, the Mashigan comes with a brushed motor. And let's be honest here, brushed motors are perfectly fine to get started with, but if you want to do even remotely serious crawling, going brushless is basically the only real option. So in my case, the Mashigan received a Hobbywing Fusion Pro setup, where the ESC and motor are combined into one unit. That saves a lot of space, reduces cable clutter, and keeps everything looking much cleaner inside the chassis. But the biggest advantage of the Fusion Pro is of course the driving feel itself. The smooth, low-speed control, throttle precision, and crawling behavior are on a completely different level compared to a brushed setup. It just feels so much more controlled and refined on technical sections. Besides that, I also added some extra weight low underneath the chassis to lower the center of gravity a bit, The stock wheels and tires were replaced with aluminum beadlocks and proper soft crawler tires for more grip on the rocks and obstacles. And finally, to complete the whole build properly, because the Mashigan steering wheel actually turns together with the steering direction, I placed Wednesday Addams behind the wheel together with her loyal sidekick Thing, who's apparently now fully responsible for the steering duties. However, there are still a few things on the RocHobby Mashigan that could definitely use some extra attention, and a couple of upgrades would make a huge difference. For example, the steering servo is still completely stock, and honestly, I wouldn't mind something with a bit more power and speed. Especially during technical crawling sections, you can really notice that the original servo sometimes struggles a little with the heavier wheels and added weight. And then there's another thing that slightly drives me crazy. The doors and rear tailgate seem to have a personality of their own. At the most random and unexpected moments, they suddenly pop open for absolutely no reason. You're carefully crawling over obstacles, fully focused, and then suddenly, surprise! Open door mode activated! So at some point I may have to reinforce the hinges a little bit, or in the worst case scenario just grab an entire roll of duct tape and tape everything shut permanently. Although, let's be honest, that would probably ruin the whole beautiful scale look immediately. Now honestly, the RocHobby Mashigan is simply an absolute pleasure to drive, because that's really what this crawler is all about. It's not trying to be some extreme competition crawler that climbs walls like gravity doesn't exist. This truck is all about the experience, the scale realism, and just having fun out on the trails. And visually, it absolutely nails that. Every single time I take it onto the course, it just looks fantastic driving between the rocks, dirt, grass, and obstacles. It has that realistic off-road appearance that immediately makes it feel like a tiny real expedition vehicle exploring nature. What makes the Mashigan so enjoyable is the relaxed driving style it creates. You're not constantly chasing speed or impossible obstacle lines. Instead, it's all about smooth crawling, choosing your route carefully, and simply enjoying the drive itself. And honestly, sometimes that's exactly what RC crawling should be about. The whole scale appearance adds so much character to the experience as well. The detailed body, the realistic proportions, and all the little design touches make it incredibly fun to watch while driving. It almost feels like filming a miniature off-road adventure movie at times. One of my favorite details is definitely the interior setup. Because the steering wheel actually turns together with the steering direction, I placed Wednesday Addams behind the wheel, together with her loyal sidekick, Thing, handling the steering duties. And honestly, it fits the character of the Mashigan perfectly. That's really the charm of this crawler. It has personality. It's fun. It looks amazing on the trail, and every driving session feels like a small adventure, instead of just trying to beat obstacles as aggressively as possible. Of course, there are faster crawlers, there are more capable crawlers, and there are definitely more extreme competition builds out there. But sometimes you simply want a crawler that makes you smile every time you put the battery in and head onto the trail. And the Mashigan does exactly that. And here we are again at the exact obstacle where the axial capra gave me an incredibly hard time before. So naturally, the big question was, would the RocHobby Mashigan handle it any better? Well, almost. And here's another perfect example of why you should never give up too quickly while crawling. Sometimes you're carefully trying to take an obstacle as slowly and controlled as possible. The crawler gets stuck, the wheels stop moving, and you immediately think, well, that's game over. But every now and then, in those strange, magical RC moments, giving it just a tiny bit more throttle is exactly what makes the difference. And this obstacle was one of those moments. A little extra wheel speed, a small burst of momentum, and suddenly the RocHobby Mashigan just clawed its way right over the obstacle like it was nothing. Sometimes crawling is all about patience and precision, and sometimes the answer is simply, send it a little harder. The funny thing about RC crawling is that every obstacle tells a completely different story. Some sections look incredibly easy at first glance, and then somehow turn into a complete disaster the moment your crawler touches them. Meanwhile, other obstacles look absolutely impossible, and somehow the Mashigan casually drives over them like it's out for a relaxing Sunday drive. That unpredictability is honestly one of the best parts of the hobby. You constantly find yourself studying lines, checking tire placement, trying different approaches, and pretending you totally meant to drive into that rock you just hit. And then there are those rare, perfect moments where everything suddenly works together. The tires hook up perfectly, the suspension settles just right, and the crawler slowly climbs over an obstacle so smoothly that it almost looks easy. Of course, usually 5 seconds later, something completely unexpected happens. A tire slips, the body leans way too far, your confidence disappears instantly, and suddenly the crawler is hanging sideways in a position that makes absolutely no sense anymore. But honestly, that's exactly what makes crawling so addictive. It's never completely predictable. Every run feels different, every obstacle reacts differently, and every successful climb feels genuinely satisfying. And somehow, the Mashigan makes those moments even more enjoyable because of its scale appearance and relaxed driving style. It's not about maximum speed or aggressive driving. It's about taking your time, enjoying the trail, and simply seeing how far you can push the crawler before physics starts disagreeing with your decisions. Well, here we are at the final obstacle of today, and once again, it's one of those obstacles that looks ridiculously easy at first sight, right up until the moment you actually start driving it, because somehow these easy-looking sections always turn into the weirdest challenges imaginable, One wheel slips away, the angle suddenly feels completely wrong, and before you know it, you're questioning every driving decision you've made in the last 30 seconds. But that's also the fun part of crawling. Sometimes you just have to trust the crawler. Pick a line, stay committed, and see what happens. And honestly, when you approach an obstacle with a little bit of confidence in the truck, the results can sometimes be surprisingly impressive. And with the rear tailgate swinging open yet again, together with another door that apparently decided it wanted some fresh air, we've reached the end of today's video. I really hope you enjoyed coming along on this crawling session. Thank you all once again for watching, supporting the channel, and joining me on these RC adventures. It's always massively appreciated. And as always, on to the next RC adventure.